How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Ride or Die, America's most provocative and dangerous vlogging series. I am here once again in Carline, waiting to pick up my son from prison. But I was thinking about on the drive over, I didn't have a camera mount when I drove over, that's why I didn't do it while I was driving. I was thinking about the new Dave Chappelle special, The Closer, and kind of the reaction or surrounding it. And there was a bunch of stuff that happened yesterday. What happened? Like, so they had the trans community and the allies that work at Netflix. They did a walkout and they did a protest in front of the Netflix building in California. And then some people that actually know who they are, Dick Masterson and Vito Gasuli, some gross, fat Italian little turd. They kind of made the headlines because they brought signs that says, like, I like Dave, jokes are funny, etc., etc. That kind of stuff. Pretty milquetoast things, but when you go talk to a community like that, they're gonna fucking freak out. It doesn't matter. Anything that like kind of goes counter to what their accepted predetermined mode of behavior for an event like that is going to be spotted and whatever. So they kind of like minorly assaulted the guys and they like took their signs and tried to break them and stuff. So it made all a bunch of headlines, which kind of just brought it back into my mind because this Dave Chappelle news cycle, this thing's been going on for what, like fucking 3 weeks now? Like, we got nothing better to talk about in this country? There's nothing else going on? Oh no, this is the most important thing, is that Dave Chappelle made a mildly funny fucking comedy special, and that's the end of the world, and that's the end of the thing. We got, this is words are violence, all that kind of good stuff. This is killing people. People are dying because of Dave Chappelle's words. We all know that's not really true. They're trying to say that it supports an environment that is divisive, and it supports an environment that could potentially cause harm. This is going to lead people to not like trans people. When if you watch the special, that's really not the gist of it. It's really more going after activism. These kind of intense progressive activists that don't have a lot of coherence in even the kind of things they say. And if you listen to some of the speakers from the event yesterday, there's a lot of incoherence there. I mean, like, they're okay implying that Dave Chappelle is a slave, he's a house Negro, that that he gets his check from his master, Netflix. That's what they said. We're here to talk to Dave Chappelle's master. We're here to talk to Davey's master. And you're like, how fucking... It not only is it disgusting, it's just wildly dissonant, right? Or there's dissonance, not dissonant. Dissonance. There's cognitive dissonance between the kinds of things that they say affect human beings and the things they're allowed to say to the targets they deem acceptable. And Dave Chappelle has become an acceptable target to kind of say whatever the fuck you want about. Now you can say racist things, you can say kind of misandrous things, you can say whatever you want about Dave Chappelle. We just went through 18 months of people burning cities and all sorts of shit, and trying to elevate black voices. Black Lives Matter, right? What happened to that? Not Dave Chappelle, though, because Dave Chappelle doesn't fit into that paradigm. Because black people and trans people and gay people, they're only useful if they toe the fucking line. That's the reality. They're only useful if they toe the fucking line for these people. This is not about actual equity or equality or everybody treating themselves nice. No, this is about power. This is power politics writ large. And they're trying to so they go after cultural institutions. They're not going after, like, the government and the things that the government do. It was easy. They could bitch and complain about Trump and say whatever they wanted about him, right? But there's no real... They know it's not going to be very effective. That's not an effective tactic to go after government. Government takes 100 years to accomplish anything, right? But what is effective is going after cultural stuff. Television shows, news networks, Twitter people. Those things are effective. The soft silencing. A lot of people are talking about, like, oh, they're canceling Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle can't be canceled. It was kind of stupid to even lump him into that category. Because honestly, like, he's so rich, and he's so, like, he has integrity. Whether you like Dave Chappelle or not, whether you think he's funny or not, Dave Chappelle has got integrity coming out of his ass. I mean, this is a guy that walked away from a $50 million contract back in like 2003. And $50 million was something. It was the biggest deal any, like, kind of comedic actor or stand-up had ever gotten. Just for like it was like a 2-season or a 3-season deal at Comedy Central to make more Chappelle Show. And as we all know, he didn't do that. He walked away. People say he went crazy. He went back to Africa. I think he converted to Islam somewhere along in there. I don't know if that's something more recent or not. But anyways, one of the interesting things about watching people complain about Dave Chappelle is how little seem to have actually watched the special. The special itself, like, he definitely has a perspective. And I would say, as a knock against the special, a negative of the special, it's not very funny. Because I don't even think that was his intention. Like, he's calling it the closer, and it's completely reflexive and reactionary to the last, like, 3 specials he put out. The content there, because when he did his first one, when he came back, and that first Netflix special dropped, like, he made some trans jokes, and that was the start of all this. So it just started a cycle, and with every special he's had subsequently, he's just kind of doubled down on it. So the closer is basically a list of, like, say, like 5 or 6 topics that he's been told that he should not really broach, that he shouldn't indulge himself with. So he just goes after it. I mean, he makes fun of gay people, trans people, Jews, black people, white people. He covers the gambit, really, in the special. But, like I said, quite mean to his life, and how it's affected him. You know, it's not that it's not interesting. Dave Chappelle, if anything, he's, you know, one of his successes, one of his abilities as a comedian is that he's very listenable to. He's enigmatic in that way. Like, he holds your attention. He is somebody that holds court. And that's actually been kind of the trajectory of his newest incarnation as an entertainer. He holds court now. It's not really so much stand-up in the traditional sense. He's really kind of blended social commentary and stand-up in a way that is probably more direct than it has been in the past. Or, actually, no, I wouldn't say more direct, but more organic. You know, if you watch, like, George Carlin or something, points, right? Dave Chappelle, it's a little more, like, human. It's a little less writerly, a little less essayist. It's very natural. It flows very naturally. You really do feel like you're just listening to a person talk, and, you know, and explain their thoughts about things. And it's comforting, and it feels validating to people, because people have felt like they've been driven crazy by this shit. And I've talked about this before. There's old episodes of Nightcap and stuff where I've talked about this subject in particular, particularly trans women. Because, like, there is something here that we're not allowed to talk or broach these subjects without maybe suffering some sort of great social cost. But it's just like, you know, if people are trying to kind of eliminate the concept of femininity and women in general, they're trying to eradicate that concept. You should be alarmed. You should be alarmed because somebody is saying that their identity is more important than a natural identity. So how you feel is more important than the identity that you have no choice but to engage with, like your immutable characteristic. And I find that stuff very alarming. You know, it's funny. I've been saying this a lot lately. I don't know where. Maybe just to myself. You know, why doesn't anybody give a fuck about trans men? Why is that not even? It's not even part of the conversation. It doesn't even rank, because everybody fucking knows that trans men do not affect the nature of masculinity. It doesn't affect jobs. It doesn't affect sports. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect anything. So yeah, you do have to pay a little extra attention when it comes to women. You do. You got a white knight for the ladies. You got to a little bit. And like I said, this is not me, like, if you want to be trans, go for it. Like, I don't care. I have no animosity towards, like, a trans person. But activists, people that subscribe to groupthink, ideological persuasion, the way that they very aggressively try to ruin people's lives over slights and misunderstandings, I don't go for that. I don't truck with that shit. Who the fuck would? Who would? You know, I got a kid. I might be trying to make another one. You know, what if it's a girl? I need to defend these basic concepts, of sex and gender. We should not be erasing biological reality or being able to talk about them because it will hurt people's feelings. And that is something that also that, you know, Dave Chappelle kind of gets into in The Closer. He's like, you know, reality is less important now than hurting a gay person's feelings. And he was being a little glib and flip. And it's, you know, that was a joke, but it's got a very real undercurrent. It presupposes something very real, very real. But yeah, it's just been it's been interesting to watch the news cycle. And actually, the most frustrating thing to me about it is that it's just given this much attention. It's completely media driven because all these people, they work for a media company. They all have friends and colleagues that work at Variety and Kotaku and other media outlets that like 10 people read, but they get the headlines. Everybody sees the headlines. And it created, you know, it's supposed to generate something, right? So this stuff gets covered, like, you know, for a week before this protest, this walkout happened. It was all over some of the bigger trades. Like I said, like Variety, Hollywood Reporter. Those are pretty big trades. Still barely anybody was there. It was a very small thing. Because nobody gives a fuck. That's really, at the end of the day, most people do not agree with this fucking vocal minority, the insanity of some of these people. They don't. They don't agree with it. You could poll most people. If you get somebody in a more lucid, honest moment, apply them with some alcohol perhaps, like, they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you. They don't fucking agree with this stuff. They think it's a little nutty, a little freaky. But they have the soft self-censorship that goes on because they see the effect. They see what happens when you decide to talk about it. Like, just talk about it. They see what happens. They don't want to fucking deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. Do you want to deal with it? Would you want to deal with that shit? I still, you know, there's been a few nightcaps that I've done, I'm like, man, this is going to really come back and get me. And I think that, and I'm like, why? Like, I don't even say anything that crazy. I'm a pretty median person. I'm like a filthy centrist. Like, nothing I say that I think is really all that crazy or that bad. But I just know that the right person sees that and wants to go after me and try to ruin my life. Like, it's possible. It's possible because I make jokes. You know, if you've listened to the podcast, if you've listened to Zoobox Prime and other videos and Nightcap and stuff, I make a lot of like off-color jokes. Some edgelord shit is definitely in there. It's part of my personality. It's just kind of part of who I am. It's part of my identity. It's part of my identity, goddammit. But, you know, and you feel that sense of pressure, that tenseness, like, oh, I can't really post anything that I really believe online. I don't want to get fucking my life ruined. I can't really talk about politics on Facebook or Twitter anymore. Because that's the thing. And the thing is, we have like this whole like snitch apparatus that's been built about people reporting each other. If the algorithm doesn't get you, your fucking friends will. And it's really, really dispiriting. And it goes part and parcel with what happens to somebody like Dave Chappelle or this whole situation, is that is just the big version of something that people experience every day. And, you know, but people like Dave Chappelle, they're in positions. They have fuck you money. They really can't be canceled. Joe Rogan's a good example of this. Like, you know, these are people that can withstand a storm. And it takes exceptional people to do these things, right? It's not something everybody's equipped for mentally, financially, whatever you want to call it. You gotta be on top of the mountain a little bit to really start poking these bears, because they're deeply ingrained in parts of our, especially entertainment culture. That it's been completely eroded and taken over by kind of activist groups. There's always been a little bit of, you know, social progressivism. That's always been in movies, television show especially. I mean, sitcoms are basically social engineering. Is essentially what they are. They tell you how you should feel about a topic, and the culture comes around to it 5 to 10 years later. Like, that's just, watch Will and Grace, watch Friends, watch the types of things they talk about and what they are normalizing. Check it out. You'd be surprised. 5 years later, everybody's doing those things. But yeah, so people that can, they need to be able to kind of stand up with their voices and really push back, at least push back. The craziest thing to me about the closer thing, though, there's a lot of comedians coming out chastising Dave Chappelle. Sarah Silverman famously is just like, well, yeah, I know I used to do blackface and make all sorts of jokes and edgy stuff and talk about fucking Jesus and whatnot, but now comedy has changed. We need to grow with the times. It's like, no, we should be encouraging people to like be able to identify a joke and have a little bit of thicker skin. It's okay to laugh at yourself. Everybody exists in some sort of hypocrisy or absurdity or whatever, and you should just be comfortable existing like that. There's nothing wrong with that. Because it's natural. It happens to fucking everybody. And it's good to have enough self-awareness where you can laugh at yourself. That's really the only way you can change. I like comedy in a lot of ways. It's like one of our most like powerful tools as a species, especially culturally. It's the only thing that can withstand like kind of authoritarian measures and be able to speak truth to power. And right now, as much as people want to act like this is like some sort of aggrieved minority group right now, especially with trans people, they, like I said earlier, this is a power play. This is a game for power, for cultural cachet, for cultural influence. They are trying to become the dictators of what is and isn't acceptable in entertainment. They are just the new censors. In the 90s, this was the religious right. Oh, actually, from the 30s to the 90s, it was the religious right. And now we're going in this other direction where they're also insane prudes and also fucking completely subscribe to predetermined modes of behavior. It's ideological. It's religious. It's a secular religion. That's all this shit is for most people. And the power that comes with that, being able to wield that and what you can do with it, how you can mold society, how they can get in and try to fuck your kids. You ever notice that? All of these conversations, I was talking to somebody about this recently. A little side tangent I'll end on. Everything ends with your kids. Everything ends, all the goals, all roads end with them having access to your children. Whether it's drag queen story time, or it's teaching gender identity in first grade, or hormone blockers when they're 6. Like, there's the people that openly advocate for these things. Just like there's people that openly advocate for having sexual relationships with children and adults. That's also something people advocate for. And usually there's a lot of intersectionality with this stuff, a lot of crossover. Okay, kids? With these groups and these activists, with these kind of beliefs. And yeah, just something, to be aware about. I was just kind of suspicious, a little weird. It's weird that, every other week you find out somebody that's involved in one of these fucking organizations gets arrested for child pornography or child sex trafficking. I mean, holy shit. It's fucking astounding. It's crazy, dude. And people just want to close their eyes, act like, oh, it's not something we can talk about. You have the entire fucking influencer sphere just all fucking cucked. I even hate having to use these words, but like simp, soy, beta bitches. All of them. Nobody has a fucking spine. Nobody believes in freedom of speech. Just like that guy, one of the guys that gets attacked. He had a sign that says, I like Dave. Vito Gaspuli, or whatever the fuck his name is. Vito. Look at him. You can find him on Twitter. He's all over the big fat guy. And he's like one of these people. He's kind of like an internet troll, but he doesn't really believe in free speech because he's like all about like, oh, if you break the terms of service on YouTube, I will report you. But at the same time, will defend something like Netflix having cuties on its service, And he was there, so he got a lot of play, even though he's not really a free speech guy, but he's just kind of a troll, and he's going to get attention, which at some point is going to undermine the credibility of people speaking out like this, because he's an easy target to just use in a negative way. He's like ammunition. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? All right, everybody. Well, I think I've rambled enough. I hope I made some sort of point. I've been talking for like 20 minutes. Good old Carline. I got a lot of time to kill. But I hope that I made some sort of point. It's just kind of these random thoughts been kicking around in my old brain. And I wanted to share them just with you. Just with you, boo. All right, everybody.